Hi everybody, it's me, Misty, chairman of the Homer City Community Garden and Learning Center. Today we're focusing more on the and Learning Center part by bringing here to you the first video that we are putting on YouTube as an official community garden video. I'm filming in a cozy spot, which is my living room. I thought it would be appropriate to show you that you could do this anywhere. Obviously a kitchen would work better, but the lighting in my kitchen is garbage. The sound in my living room is garbage. So we're just gonna have to make do with what we have, right? We thought that it would be a good idea to bring some long form videos to you. So we decided to go through YouTube to do that. We have posted some videos on Facebook last year that give you some instructions, but I figured I would start off with a topic that I love and I'm very passionate about, and that is herbs and how to use herbs. That is my main focus as a gardener. It's always been my thing. Ever since I was little, I've been enjoying these types of things, but I've really studied a lot over the last few years of my life, about the last 10 years. Motherhood is what kind of brought it. So without further ado, we're gonna get started here. First thing we're gonna do is put on a pot of tea, or make a cup of tea. Now I'm using my handy dandy kettle. They make electric kettles. Do you? Microwaves work great too, but we're gonna start warming our water and we're gonna talk about a couple things. So our topic today is herbal infusions. We're gonna touch base on a couple herbal uses, but we're not gonna go over an extensive length of herbs. We'll do that in other series in other places. But we're going to talk about how we can use herbs once we grow them. So this time of year, when there's really nothing to do in the garden other than maybe start some seeds and start thinking about cold weather crops, it's a nice time to start going through all of the stocks of things that we have put up for the winter and see what we have left. And if we haven't already, start to make some products from these herbs. I need to stress right off the bat before we get too far into this that I am not a doctor. I cannot give you medical advice. Everything that I talk about in this video is going to be my feelings on certain plants and the way I've used them and the success or lack of success that I've had with them. I very much encourage you to go do your own research, figure out what works for you, especially if you have some sort of health condition that you're trying to deal with. And especially pregnancy is a really big one that has a lot of interactions that we need to be careful of. So everything that I discuss with you today is things that I use. I do not have any underlying health conditions and I do not take any medications. So you really need to check with your doctor and make sure that these are safe things for you. But to start off, most everyone can have a cup of tea. So that's what we're going to do. So I have my pot of water on. We're going to get that going and we're going to talk about a couple things. Now, obviously you can buy tea bags at the store, and I highly encourage, if that's what you have access to, that's what you should do. The stores nowadays have amazing opportunities for different types of herbs. So you can find almost every common herb in a tea bag at the store, at most stores. If you can't find them at the big box stores, check some of your local supermarkets. That's another great place. For me, we're going to talk about tea that I harvested myself, and today we're going to be talking about chamomile. So I'm going to be making a cup of chamomile tea. This is chamomile that I grew in my backyard and harvested and dried, and then I just put it in. This is an old spaghetti sauce jar that I just spray painted the top of it to make it look aesthetically pleasing. Do you have to do that? No. But I highly recommend saving jars so that you can put your things in it. There's no reason to go buy jars just to store your herbs when you usually have a jar laying around anyway. So always focus on using what you have. So we will be making some of that. Let's talk about some of the things. Obviously, a handy dandy cup, any kind of cup. This is one of my favorite cups. This was made by a local artist in Homer City, and I'm very excited about having this cup. I use this quite a bit. Like I said, there can be tea bags. Also, you can buy packages of empty tea bags, which I'm a big fan of, and you would just open this up and insert your tea, and then you stick it in your cup and you fold over the top, and that's kind of what secures it. So then when you pour the water in, it gets covered, and then you just pull the tea bag out just like you would any other tea bag. But that's not what I'm going to do today because I don't need to. I usually use this for whenever guests come and we're making several cups of tea at a time. But for me, I either do a tea ball, which there's different types of tea balls. This one is like a silicone top with a little basket. It's really easy to clean. That's why I like it. They have other ones, but this is what we have. I like that. You would, for 1 cup of tea, you would basically put enough tea to fill this little ball, and that would be 1 cup. And another one that I really like, this is the one, especially if I'm going to be making blends or making a really strong cup of tea, that it would be more than what this little thing would hold. I'll use this, and it just sits in the top, just like that. And I want to make sure this is getting hot. Okay, and so you would put your tea in here and you would steep it. Since I'm making chamomile today, chamomile is kind of a delicate herb, so I wouldn't recommend this, but a lot of times if you have some like really tough herbs that isn't flower, like especially leaves, since this is a flower, this is considered delicate to me, but if you have like tough leaves and stuff like that, you would want to put a plate over top and steep like that. Okay, so we've gone over all. We need a kettle, we need a cup, we need some kind of tea apparatus. I also have a whole teapot that has a strainer built into it. You can really get elaborate with the tea stuff. But why are we talking about tea? Well, because I felt that was a great place to start. Plus, I get to have a cup of tea while I talk to you. So the idea here is that what are we creating? We're making a tea. Well, most people understand the word tea, but most people don't understand the word infusion. And I have this behind me. You know, if you wanted to be able to see it, I figured we could have a little vocab lesson up there, and that would be helpful. But let me get my papers here so that I can reference them as well. So basically, an infusion is, I'm going to read it and then I'm going to tell you what it really is. By definition, is a drink, remedy, or extract prepared by soaking the leaves of a plant or herb in liquid. Okay, and it's very vague. And it also says the leaves, it's basically the aerial parts of the plant, and that is, the way I remember what aerial parts of the plant is everything that's up in the air. So that would be the stem, the leaves, the flower parts. Basically everything but the roots. And barks, a lot of times we're talking, so that's an aerial part, but that's, the way I look at it is aerial is kind of delicate and you can rip it apart. Barks and roots are usually tough and they're not easy to rip apart. That's just kind of how I think of it. It's how I remember. So when we're talking about aerial parts, delicate parts, we're talking about infusions. So we're talking about boiling water. It doesn't have to be fully hard boil, just warm and bubbles are forming. So some different types of teas will say very hot water and some will say warm hot water, you know, but look it up if you're really concerned. For me, I go with aerial parts, boiling water poured over top. If it's a flower, I don't usually cover it. If I'm making a cup of tea just to drink tea, I don't usually cover it. But if I'm making one specifically for a medicinal reason, I sometimes do cover it, even though it is delicate, because you're trying to keep all of the medicine in. And I just feel like I'd rather drink my tea quicker when I'm trying to actually drink it, so I don't usually cover it. But if you're really trying to make a strong medicine, the more you keep it covered, the more stuff stays in it, to put it in plain language. So aerial parts, we're going to pour the tea over. Any kind of root parts, we'll talk about what we do with those later. So since this is an aerial part, we're going to use the method of pouring hot water over and of steeping the tea. So that is... let's see. When we're talking about steeping tea, different plants require a different steep time, but generally speaking, we're talking 3 to 5 minutes for a cup of tea. So, and this is herbal tea we're talking about. We're not necessarily talking about like black tea or green tea, like your typical actual tea. A lot of times people won't call them herbal teas because there's not actual tea leaf in it. But for me, for this purpose, I'm going to call this tea. Anytime I drink a hot beverage that isn't coffee out of my cup, it's a tea to me. But everyone has their opinions on that. So we're going to I usually take about, I didn't bring a spoon over, but I usually take about a tablespoon, which this isn't obviously a tablespoon, but I usually do about 3 pretty good pinches, which, you know, do whatever, but it's about this much. Okay, so it basically covers the bottom of this thing. Also, it would be about this much, right? So yeah, however you want. I can already smell it. It's so good. So however you want to do that, you're going to put that in there. This is starting to get hot already, which is amazing. And so while that has a couple more seconds of warming up, we're going to talk about, in our definition, it said soaking the leaves in a liquid. Okay, so for now, our liquid is going to be water. But there are different types of liquids that we can also infuse herbs into. And that's what this whole class today is about. So when we look up here, there's another word that we're going to talk about, and that is menstruum. Menstruum, in this case, is the substance that dissolves solids or holds it in suspension. To make it easy, just consider that a solvent. So basically the liquid that you're using for your infusion is your menstruum. And there are different liquids that you're going to find out that can be used. Right now we're talking about water, and that's how we make our tea. Now, this is getting pretty hot. I'm not going to let it whistle because I know when this kettle is getting close. So, I see the steam, I know it's hot. We're going to go ahead and make pour the cup of tea so I can start the steeping process, okay? And I'm going to set a little alarm here so that I don't say, oh, steep it for this amount of time, and then you guys will be like, yeah, you didn't do that, right? Oh, there it is. So we're going to take our water, and we're just going to pour that over our herbs until we see it come up to as far as we want. I don't know if I leave it open. So we're going to leave that there. And again, you can cover it if you want it to be really strong. You cannot. I like my chamomile tea to be open. So we're going to let that there for 3 to 5 minutes. Okay? So we're going to set that up there while we talk about a couple other things. So what we have done here is we've created an infusion. We've poured the hot water over the herbs, and that hot water is going to pull out the components that make the herb taste good, that make it smell good. All of the volatile chemicals and oils that are in the herb are going to come out from the hot water. Some herbs prefer water to pull the oils out, and some prefer other things. And I left that over there. And some of the other things are, you can infuse oil, you can infuse alcohol, you can infuse witch hazel, you can infuse glycerin, you can infuse honey. These are all menstruums that you can use as your solvents. Like, oh, vinegar. I forgot about vinegar. That's another one. So, and we're going to touch base on some of those. Okay, so this is just the easiest way to do it would be hot water and herbs and make a cup of tea. Now, a lot of times you're making tea to drink the tea. Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. We already know that, right? But there are other reasons why you might want to infuse water with herbs. For instance, and the reason why I chose chamomile tea is that, and again, this is my experience, things that I have done that I've had success with. I'm not saying that it would work for everybody. And that's the last time I'm going to say it. So anytime I give an example of how I use herbs, it's just how I use it, and it's not a generalized statement for everybody. But chamomile tea is really effective in a couple different scenarios. One, I like to use it on plants. I will make a pot of really strong chamomile tea, or you can make a cup of tea, drink that cup of tea, and you can reuse, like once you pull this out, it's not done yet, but once you pull it out and strain it, instead of just tossing this, make a second cup of tea and then let that cool. You can use that and water plants with it, and if you water on the top layer of the soil, that chamomile tea will help kill some of the microbes and things that cause fungus, that cause mold. It actually helps with a lot of plant diseases, especially at the early age. It's very, very soothing and safe for seedlings. You can also, obviously it has to be cold when you use it, but you can also put it in a spray bottle and spray your seedlings with that. And the chamomile tea cuts down on the amount of dampening off, like wilt and disease that happens with seedlings. So that's another reason why to infuse water with chamomile. Second thing, these are in no order of significance, but a second thing that works really well is if you have any sort of eye infection, pink eye, it works on pink eye, but like honestly I would probably just go to the doctor. But if you're starting to feel like you have itchy eyes, even allergy eyes, if you take chamomile tea and you soak a cotton ball in chamomile tea and you dab it on there, it tends to help. My cats get crusty eyes, and we make chamomile tea and we keep it just a little bit warm and we wipe out their eyes. So basically eye infections are really good to be used for chamomile tea. Now a lot of times I'll take a chamomile tea bag or make a bag up, and then I'll soak that in there and I'll take it out and let it cool off a little bit, and then just put that right on the eye, the whole chamomile tea bag. So these are all other things other than tasty beverages that we could do that would allow us to utilize a water infusion of chamomile. Okay, so it's been about 4.5 minutes. Okay, so we're just gonna take this out of here and we're gonna put it here, and now we have an amazing cup of tea. Smells so good. It's a little hot, so we're gonna let that cool down, but it is delicious. And you can put anything you want in here. You put honey, whatever you want. I'm not gonna do that. I'll just drink it straight because chamomile is really easy to enjoy just by itself. Like I kind of already touched base on chamomile tea, but it is antibacterial and anti-inflammatory. So if you have any kind of issues, basically for that, that's why it works great on eyes, because it takes down the inflammation. If there's an infection, it takes care of the bacteria that's causing the infection. We talked about a heaping tablespoon of herbs to make 1 cup of tea. We steep the aerial parts and leaves 3 to 5 minutes, and we can cover to retain the oil. And we also talked about how we can use it for things other than drinks. The last thing I want to talk about is this word right here, decoction. And I'm going to read off the actual definition, which is a lot of words, and that's why I kind of truncated it over here for you. But it is the liqueur resulting from concentrating the essence of a substance by heating or boiling, especially a medicinal preparation made from a plant. So basically, when we're talking about aerial plant parts, we're talking about steeping for a short period of time. When we're talking about decoctions, we are talking about the root and the bark of the plant, the hard parts, and the reason why we boil them, which would mean we would make a pot of water, we would bring that pot to a boil, and then we would stick in the roots or barks into that pot of water and boil it for, I forget exactly how long, because I don't 5 to 10 minutes. So we boil it for about 5 to 10 minutes, and that actually helps to pull some of that out from that really fibrous material. So it just needs a little extra heat, extra time to get the components out of it, as opposed to the delicate parts. So that's why we have infusions and decoctions, and both can be made into a tea using water. So that is the end of part 1, and that was herbal infusions using water to make tea and other items. We're going to move on now to part 2, which is tinctures. Okay, we're back for part 2 now. We're going to move on to the topic of tinctures. What is a tincture? Well, essentially what we're making here is the depths of medicine. A lot of times a cup of tea just isn't enough to cut it, and we need something a little bit stronger. So we're going to learn how to do that. Here we have the word tincture up on our thing, and I have, I'm gonna read you got a lot of things in my way. The technical definition of a tincture is a solution of a medicinal substance in an alcoholic solvent. So basically, a solution in alcohol. Okay, so you're using you're using alcohol as your menstruum, and the alcohol is going to pull the other components that are not usually pulled out by water, and it just gives you a stronger infusion of the herb, but into a tincture form. A lot of times tinctures are taken in dropper bottles, which I didn't bring with me today because I just usually make a jar and then I fill dropper bottles as needed. But we're talking instead of a dose of an entire cup of tea, we're talking about a dose of a couple drops to a couple teaspoons of it. So think of it as like a liquid medicine that you buy at the store. That's what we're doing. So it's small amounts. Now, again, we're getting into, there could be interactions with other medications, so tinctures aren't for everyone. Teas are much safer. But again, if you're looking to get interested in these types of things, this is the section for you to learn. So this seems so daunting, but I really need you to understand this is not all that hard. Okay, so what I have done is I've prepared a couple things so we can make the magic of this go fast. So essentially, is this hot? Ooh, that is hot. I don't want to put that there. So essentially what we need for this is we're going to need a jar, a strainer, a funnel, maybe something to push it around with, a lid, a piece of wax paper, I'll explain that here in a minute, and whatever herbs we want. Most importantly, vodka. This is 100 proof vodka. Why is it 100 proof? Well, because if you understand anything about proofage, it is 50% alcohol and 50% water. That's how we get 100 proof. So whatever your percentage of alcohol is, you double that and that gives you the proof. You can use 80 proof vodka. Most people say don't. This is super cheap. I'm not going to talk about the type. I'm sure you can figure it out from here what kind it is, and I'll probably screw up and show the label, but it doesn't matter the type. The cheaper, the better. It really doesn't matter. If you like a smooth flavor, use something more expensive. If you don't care, then use something cheap. I come from the school of use whatever's cheapest. So I use a cheap 100 proof vodka that you can buy. Well, we're in Pennsylvania. You can buy it at the liquor store. So a lot of people will say to use what is essentially a grain alcohol or a moonshine or the brand Everclear. You can do what you want, but it's not super necessary and it's hard to get your hands on. So I say for most things, 100 proof vodka works. Okay, so those are the things that we need. We're going to do a measurement system that is based on the folk medicine, and that's essentially to take. Now remember, all these things that I'm making, I'm using my hands because I'm going to make these and consume them for myself and my family. So like if you're going to make something for someone else, just like as if you were making a cake for someone else, you would tie your hair up, you would wear gloves, all this stuff is for me. And I'm just showing you how I make medicine for my family. So you can do it as technical as you want or not. We're literally in my living room. So obviously I'm not trying to make anything, to sell or I might give it away to my family. But essentially what we have here, this says a Melissa on it, but that's because that is the official word. This is Melissa officinalis, and that is essentially a fancy word for lemon balm. Why are we using lemon balm today? Well, that's a good question. It's because we're going to make a tincture out of it. And what I like, and this is where it's hard, like a better funnel would really work, but like, did I think to bring that? No. So you're just basically going to take handfuls of your stuff, whatever it is that you want to make it out of, and you're going to stick it in your jar, okay? And you're going to kind of crush it up a little bit, but not too much. We're not trying to pulverize it here. We're just trying to give it a little bruising, a little crush, okay? And we're going to try to fill up our jar, and we're going to make a huge mess. Now let me tell you about lemon balm and why I love it so very much. Lemon balm is easy to grow, especially in Pennsylvania, and that's where we live, so that's what we're talking about, right? So it grows pretty profusely. In fact, it'll take over if you let it, and sometimes that's good, and sometimes it's like, why did I do that? But it's a beautiful smelling herb. It has a lemon scent to it. When it's dry, it loses some of that lemon. But what's great about it is it's a powerful antiviral. A lot of people will use it for cold sores. You could use this tincture if you had a cold sore. I've never used it successfully on a cold sore because I've never had a cold sore, but I know a lot of people that use it. But you could use it and drop it on there, and it would not only dry it because of the alcohol, but it also has properties in it that will kill the virus that causes cold sores. But what I like it for is for anxiety and stress. It's very good for that. So, like I said, we're going to fill up our jar, and when you push it down, it's about that, about that much, okay? And then we're going to take our vodka, And we are going to pour. You want to invest in a decent amount of vodka. You're going to cover your herbs all the way to the top and a little bit extra with that vodka. Okay? So that took a lot, right? That's pretty decent chunk of my bottle. So you're going to want to buy, now I'm making a mess, several bottles of your vodka, okay? If you're going to make several things, but you want to take it up to where it's covered. Then you're going to take a piece of wax paper, okay? You could not do this, but I prefer to put a piece of wax paper on it and cover that. And then put your standard mason jar lid on it. Simply because sometimes that will, if you leave it sit for too long, sometimes it'll bother the metal lid. If you had a plastic lid, it would be different, but you could do this. This is optional. I just prefer this. And then once you get it done, you're going to give it a nice little shake. And you're going to label it. You're going to put the date and what it is and what you use as your menstruum. Okay, so you're going to write, I'll show you my other label here. So this is our lemon balm. I'll label that later, but essentially what I have here, it says stinging nettle, 100V, which means 100 proof vodka. That's what I know. And the date that I made it. Okay, so you want to put what the herb is, what the menstruum is, and the date that you made it on, or you could do the date that it's ready on, but I always forget about these things, so that's kind of pointless. I might as well just write when I made it, correct? So let's say you did, and you made this, and you let it sit for 4 to 6 weeks, sometimes 8 weeks. This has been in here for almost a year, almost 2 years. Yes, no. This has been in here for like a year. So there's really no, but you want to at least give it in a cool, dark place to sit for about 6 to 8 weeks. When you're done with that, you're going to open your jar. Maybe. Smells great. They never smell good, to be honest with you. And then, I wonder, that should fit. So after it's done, you're going to take it and you're going to make a little, where did my thingy go? Here it is. You're going to take and you're going to put your strainer and your funnel system in here, okay? And then you're just going to pour this into here. And you're going to just let that come out. Now, you can press this out. I highly recommend that you do that. It's going to be messy, so don't make fun of me when this gets sideways here. I don't know if I can. It helps to have a friend. Okay, so we have strained out our this is stinging nettle. Smells good. And I'm just going to put my lid back on. Actually, I'm going to put another piece of wax paper in there. So this is stinging nettle. This can be used for a lot of things. My favorite thing to use this for is arthritis. So once that's done, you can put this in here, and then I would say you get yourself a dropper bottle and then just transfer using your funnel into a dropper bottle, and then figure out what your dosage needs to be and use it. So this would be like your big jar that you would fill up your little dropper bottle if you wanted. And now you have medicine. You have medicine for arthritis. There's a couple other things. Do your research and see what you think is best. But this is stinging nettle, and it is ready to go and be used, and it will stay shelf stable because it's made with alcohol pretty much indefinitely. So that is how you make a tincture. So you're going to look up online what the dosage is before you actually take one. Check a couple different resources. There's so many variables, it would take me too long to explain them all, but basically all you're doing is soaking herbs in alcohol for 6 to 8 weeks, straining it out, and then you have yourself some medicine. Let me consult my notes to make sure that we did all of the things that I wanted to do. All right. Yeah, like I said, so we made lemon balm here. That will be great to reduce stress and anxiety. Those are my favorite things. Essentially, a tincture, remember, is making a very potent extract. Cool, dark place, wonderful. 2 drops to 2 tablespoons or 2 teaspoons, depending on the plant, is your dosage. So there you go. Pretty easy. So that is how to make a tincture. My cats are scampering around. They're very unhappy with me getting in their way today. Part 3 is going to be about herbal infusions in oil. And you can use just about any kind of oil. If you want to do some research to figure out what your favorite oil or what the oil suited most for this application is, you want to look up the word carrier oils, which is probably should have been something I put on the vocabulary list, but definitely look up carrier oils and you'll see why different oils have different properties and what their uses are for. Some of them are very specific, like jojoba oil is really good for hair and skin, especially faces and stuff like that. But for me, I like to use what's readily available. I definitely avoid vegetable oil because it's just made up of a lot of stuff that I'm not interested in, but I do focus more on olive oil. I like to get an extra virgin olive oil, high quality, and I make most of my stuff using that. Grapeseed oil is another good one. It's fairly reasonably priced and not as, but it is sometimes hard to find. It's more readily available now than it used to be. So my biggest thing is I always go for the olive oil. So today we're going to be making ours with olive oil. I buy a lot of it at one time. I use a lot of my oils for topical medicinal applications, and what we're going to try to learn how to do today is to make a healing salve. So let's learn about that, right? So what we're doing again is making an infusion, and how we do that is I just realized I need more jars. Just like we did with the other, I'm just going to kind of show you how we did that. So like earlier, when we took the jar and we crammed it full of the herbs, this is a different herb, this is comfrey. We're going to pack it all the way to the top, okay? And then we will take our olive oil and we will fill it up and we will put a lid on it and we will shake it up just like we did with the tincture, just like that, but with oil this time, okay? And then we're going to make sure that all of our plant material is covered by the oil. So once we fill up our jar with all of our plant material and we've covered it with oil, filled it all the way up to the very tippy top, and tap it down, let all the oil get in. You might want to give it a couple seconds and just top it off. Bring it all the way to the top of it, cover it, tighten it, shake it, and we're going to let this sit a little longer than tinctures, okay? A little bit longer. You want to let it go probably 8 to 12 weeks, 6 weeks at the least, but 8 to 12 weeks. But good news is there's a quicker way, if you want. There's controversial feelings about stuff, but a lot of people will say if you have a sunny windowsill, you can sit it in the windowsill and the sun will help infuse it. I say if you really need something fast and that's the only way you have to do it, because it's better than nothing, right? But the sun and the UV rays actually do break down some of the good components in that. So that is maybe not the best. It's not the best, but it works. So there's what works and what's best. So I'm going to tell you both ways, because sometimes you just have to do what works. So you can do that. You can also sit it by, if it's winter and you have like a heat vent, you can sit it by the heat vent and that'll keep it nice and warm. It does not have to be a cool, dark place. Dark is good. Cool. Once it's done, storing it in a cool, dark place will preserve it for a period of time longer. But while you're actually making the infusion, it can be warm. A lot of times what I do, I have radiator heat, so I have like a radiator in my office that I just put a 2x6 or something like that on top of it, and so that board warms up, and then I just sit my infusions on there. It's dark, it's out of the sun, and it's warm, and it happens a little bit faster. But there's an even better way. Here's my silly little suggestion, okay? If you've got one of those old school candle warmers or one of those little tiny dip crock pots, you can stick it in this overnight and it will get the job done. Again, is it the best way to do it? No, not necessarily. But have I done it successfully and had good results that actually worked and didn't seem like they were less than? Yes. So this isn't the most natural way because you're rushing this situation a little bit, but it will work. So if you have either a candle warmer or a little crock pot, you can stick a jar. Well, I guess I'll show you how. Stick the jar. This fits perfectly. A quart jar fits perfect in there. And it doesn't have to touch the whole way up. It just needs to be able to heat it. So I turned this on and heated it twice. I heated it for an evening until I went to bed, and then I didn't want to leave it on. And then I turned it off and I went to sleep. And then I turned it on a little bit longer. So like, about 8 hours in one of these things, and it's usually pretty good. Okay, so if you need to speed up the process, you can do that. I highly recommend you just let it infuse over a period of time. If at the end of the season in the fall, you gather your stuff, you dry your stuff, and you get it in the jars, if you make your infusions right away, then you can eventually get those to the point where they're ready to be made before you really need them when cold and flu season happens. But what we're making here is for a healing ointment, which I like to compare it to that of Neosporin, but some people get mad if you say that. But that's what I use it in substitution for what most people would use. It's not Neosporin, but that's what I use it for. Or a triple antibiotic cream, since we shouldn't use brand names, but we all grew up with that, right? So I was trying to give references that you'd understand. So this is infused comfrey. This is comfrey infused in extra virgin olive oil, organic. It doesn't really matter if it is or not, but I prefer it to be. And I'm going to show you how to turn it into something else. But first I'm going to talk about comfrey real fast. I know everybody's like, oh God, Misty's talking about comfrey again, but I cannot shout enough praise about this plant. I will try to find a picture of the plant when it's alive and put it somewhere in this video. But it's an amazing plant. It's easy to grow in Pennsylvania. In fact, it grows more than you would like it to. But the cool part is that you can pull it out and use it for so many other things. I'm not going to go into all of those things. We're only going to talk about this application. But it's very easy to grow, and it's very good to make medicine. This is not an internal medicine. This is an external medicine. There's some feelings that people have in the herbal world about internal versus external when it comes to comfrey. I'm an external. That's all I've ever used it for, and that's probably all I will use it for. What's great about this is once we strain it, the oil itself can be used automatically. Like you can use it immediately, but it's messy. It's not easy to use. So making it into something that's thicker, that sticks, is a lot better. And I'll show you my example. This is our jar of comfrey ointment that we use for everything. And yes, it's in a baby jar, or a baby food jar. Because why? Because recycling is amazing. Or reusing. This is the reusing part of the reduce, reuse, and recycle part, right? So comfrey is also known as knit bone in a more common folk terms, and they called it that because they believed that it could heal broken bones. I have never used it on a broken bone per se, but I've had great success with sprains, strains, and bruising, and it works amazing. So for those of you that know me already understand this, but we are a family of dancers. That's what my profession is. I teach dance for a living. And both of my daughters dance, so we roll ankles quite a bit, and we get bruises quite a bit. And when the girls come home and they say, hey Mom, my ankle hurts, I have a bad ankle, I use it on mine as well. This is what we do. We take the oil, we make a poultice. We can talk more about what that is specifically, but basically I take a piece of paper towel, pour the oil on it, stick the paper towel on the spot that hurts, and wrap it with an ace bandage, and we sleep like that for a couple nights, and we're back walking normal in no time. I haven't had a situation that this didn't fix. Also, we get a lot of big bruises. I tend to run into things and forget about it, so there's always a random bruise that I can't explain. So if you get a big bruise, you can do the same thing. Put this directly on it, and it will help with that. Comfrey has a component in it that helps cell regeneration, And so a lot of times what happens is it stimulates that cell regeneration, and it helps to rebuild the broken tissues and the broken whatever it is that has been injured. So it helps the healing process move along really fast, and that's what I love about comfrey. A caution is if you have a very deep wound, like this is not for deep wounds. This is for superficial cuts and boo-boos, straight up boo-boos. Like when you fall down and you scuff your knee, you can, anything that is broken skin, it should be very surface based. If you have a very deep puncture wound and you use comfrey, what will happen is the top of the wound will heal before the internal part, and that'll actually cause more problems. So you want to make sure that it's not a very deep wound that you use it on, or you give that wound a few days to begin the internal healing and use the comfrey then a few days afterwards to finish the healing. But for strains and sprains and all that other stuff, you can use that immediately. Okay, so that's good. So we have our comfrey, we understand why it's so amazing. Let's strain it. All right, so we're gonna take the same setup that we had before for straining, and we're gonna sit this like this. I think I'm gonna use this to lean it against. Oh, look at that. And then we're going to strain the leaves out and get ourselves a nice big jar full of oil. Now you can use a smaller strainer or cheesecloth or whatever, but I find that with oil, it's hard to clean. So I like to just do the metal strainer. Most of the parts will come out. Do a little bit of that, it helps. And we're just gonna get all that out. I do a nice little shaky shake. Have a little sip while I'm at it. That chamomile tea is amazing. So while I'm letting, I thought I had it. So while I'm letting this drip out, okay, it's still going, we're gonna set up what is called a double boiler. And there's a really proper way to do this, and there's a really easy way to do it, and we're gonna do it the easy way. What we're gonna make here is a salve, and I'm gonna teach you that you can take any infused oil and mix it with beeswax and create a salve. So that's what we're gonna do today. We need this double boiler so that we can melt our beeswax, so that we can combine the two. I highly recommend that when you do this, whatever you put the beeswax in needs to be something that is easy to clean, very easy to clean, preferably like metal, not plastic, or glass, because the beeswax will coat it and it will be almost impossible to get everything off. Okay? Continuing on with part 3, we have strained all of our oil, and we have started our double boiler. Basically all this is a pot with water in it, and it's boiling. Easy peasy, right? So what we're gonna do, we wanna talk about ratios. You can take just about any infused oil that you want, and you can mix it with beeswax. Now, you can get your beeswax anywhere. I prefer to get the beeswax pellets because they melt down faster. Whatever beeswax you like, that's what you should use. You're gonna mix it in a ratio of 1 to 3. So 1 part beeswax to 3 parts oil. I prefer to use a scale to do this because you get a much more accurate situation. Okay, it's a way more accurate to do that. However, if all you have is like cup measurements, like you could literally take this, and especially if you're using these pellets, you could pour 1 cup of pellets and dump that in, and then pour 3 cups of oil and dump that in, and you'll get pretty close. But it's not super accurate unless you actually measure it. So we're going to use our scale. All right, we're going to operate in small batches. We're going to do 20 grams of beeswax. We're going to sit that in our double boiler to start to melt. Okay, and we'll check on that. So while we wait on that, we're going to talk about a couple of the other cool things that we can make with different menstruums and different herbs. So for instance, I have this. Yes, this is also a spaghetti jar. This is chickweed. This is a weed that you can find in your garden most of the time, in your yard, everywhere. If it's in your garden, sometimes that's a little bit more than you want to have happening. So pull it and infuse it into witch hazel, and then this can be strained and can be used for inflammation. This is one of the examples of where you can infuse things in witch hazel. So I just went and I bought witch hazel at the store, and then I infused it with the chickweed, and now I can use it for my face. Another cool example of things you can make is vinegars. Okay, you can make culinary vinegars. You can make, which are delicious. You can use those to make salad dressings. This right here is a pine infusion into vinegar, and it's basically homemade pine salt. So when, like, our family gets a live tree every year, so when we're done with our Christmas tree, I take the branches, as many as I can hide, because I'm not allowed to hoard things, but I take as many of the branches that I can and stick them into jars, and I mix them with vinegar. This has a little bit of, these have some cranberries in it too, just to give it some color and some smell, but you can put anything you want. This is another thing you can do with old lemons and like any kind of citrus fruit. You can stick in vinegar and you can make a cleaning vinegar with that. So this has been going since I don't know, a little after Christmas. I can strain this and I can use this to clean. It's another great way of using the products that you have around the house to make something out of nothing. So again, it's a vinegar infusion here, but it is another great way to just infuse herbs or plant materials into something that is useful. So check that out. Okay, so we've allowed our double boiler to melt down our beeswax. We're going to take it out of the burner, out of the boiler, tear it off, and we're going to add, what we did here was 20 grams of beeswax, so now we're going to do 60 grams of oil. Mix that in. When you do that, you'll find that it gets a little bit thick again, so I just pop it back into that double boiler and I give it another little stir. What you don't want to do, okay, is boil the infused oil at this point, because it's already gone through enough, right? So we want to make sure that we're not really boiling all of the medicine out of it, but we can stick it in there for a second, and just to get it smooth. We don't want any chunks. Okay, so see, like right now, you can see there's chunks. We're going to stick it back in here until we don't see chunks anymore, because basically when you put that cool oil in there, that beeswax wants to harden up again, because you've put more fluids in there. So essentially, now we have a nice fluid mixture that is homogeneous. You can only see one thing, not many chunks. I'm going to go and scrape the sides, get it all down in there. Put it back in here for another second. And when it's all good to go, we're going to pour it into our jar, and then we will have a balm. Now, you can put lots of different things in here. This isn't exactly this. Okay, I put a lot of things in there, but I'm trying to teach you one herb at a time, and that's where you should always start. You should start learning one herb at a time, and then once you learn all the properties of all the different herbs and the way they work together, then you can start figuring out your own little proprietary blends of things. So work all that down. I like to use these spatulas that are made out of silicone because they're just really good at scraping. And once you get it to where it's nice and homogeneous, then we're going to pour it right into our jar. Perfect amount for this 4 ounce. So the 20 grams and the 60 grams is almost a perfect amount of oil to fill this 4 ounce jar. And you're just going to let that sit, and you're going to let that cool. And then before you know it, it'll be hard and look like this, and you can just rub it on whatever you need. You can use this for the strains and the sprains as well, especially if it's just comfrey. Like when I make this, it's more for actual boo-boos than it is for strains and sprains, just because we're okay with doing poultices of just the oil, all right? But it's messy, and if you're not a messy person and you'd rather just have something you could smear on and pull a sock over, this is what you'd want. So this is just comfrey and beeswax and olive oil. You can mix it with other things if you like, but you don't have to. And that is how you make a salve. You can make anything. You can take any oil, any herb, infuse them together and make just about anything. So I encourage you to go and explore and think about what you want and make some infusions. Start out by making a tea, and then I think really in the scheme of things, the tea, then the oil, then the tincture is kind of the progress, the evolution of herbalism. I did it a little backward just because for demonstration purposes, the tincture process was easier to show. So you're gonna get your hands messy, but you're gonna have fun doing it. So I hope that you have enjoyed this. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us or leave some comments below. Make sure you like and subscribe to our channel so that we can feel the love and know that people are watching and enjoying the products that we're trying to put out for you. Again, this was our first one. We've done our best here to just kind of make it a nice little informal hangout moment where we can learn some things. I hope that if you can and you live in our area that you're able to attend. We're doing about a dozen different classes over the course of the summer, and I hope that you can come and enjoy it with us and get some actual hands-on people-to-people interaction. Until then, we're going to keep making cool videos and post them here. So I don't know, give us some feedback. What could we do better? Hopefully the sound was good. Hopefully the lighting is okay. I'm probably going to move around and try it in 4 different places. This is like a pilot program for me to kind of see what works best, and just to try to bring you guys a little bit extra. So thanks for hanging out with us. I hope you have a really great day. Until next week, I'll see you later.